gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So I wanted to talk about Brad Lander, one of the mayoral candidates in New York City, who got detained, arrested by ICE in New York at an immigration court because he was trying to help escort an immigrant who was going to his court appointment out safely after his court hearing, because a lot of immigrants have been getting arrested at their court hearings. And I'm going to get into a little bit of the details about how and why that's happening, what exactly is the method that ICE is using there to detain people quickly. And really, this is just an example of the orders that these ICE agents have been given, because it seems pretty clear that they are under orders to take anybody they can. And if there are specifically Democratic politicians who get in their way, to arrest them. We have seen numerous times that they're willing to arrest Democratic lawmakers. They keep doing it, and it seems like even if some Democratic politician is not necessarily posing that much of a disruptance, like the senator in California who was wrestled to the ground by Homeland Security, they seem to be ready for this idea that Democrats are going to try to make a statement by being in the way when they're trying to carry out these arrests, and getting themselves arrested, etc. So it seems like they've just been given the orders to just go ahead and make the arrest and don't hesitate. So I'm showing this video real quick, a little bit here. You can see how Brad Lander had his arms linked with this immigrant, and how eventually the ICE agents were getting between them, pulling him away. What he's saying to them is, show me a warrant and I'll let go. He's challenging them to show a warrant, which they do not have. And so they eventually wrestle him away, and because he refuses to let go, they get him up against the wall and arrest him. And then they later said that he was resisting arrest and that he assaulted an officer. So that's very important. And they put out this statement about how our brave ICE agents have been getting assaulted. But the whole thing is on video, and he never assaults anyone, obviously. And so now he has been released already. There were no charges. And essentially what seems to have happened is they took him, arrested him, and took him to some ICE facility, presumably where they took the immigrant that also was arrested. And then when the governor showed up, Governor Kathy Hochul showed up, and immediately they released him. And apparently, once the governor was there, it was like, okay, governor's here, let him go. And there will be no charges. All charges were dropped. So that's the end of that. So once again, it's all performative. And while Brad Lander's actions, people will argue, are performative as well, that he did this because he knew it would end up on camera, etc. That's probably true, but that doesn't change the fact that it's effective. This is an effective tactic because it forces people to see what it looks like when these arrests are made, and it puts that in front of everyone. And it also physically makes it harder for them to do these arrests, to carry out these arrests. The reality is that if a lot of people were doing what Brad Lander is doing here, they wouldn't have been able to make the arrest. And it doesn't matter if it's a Democratic politician or who it is. And that is actually some of what has been happening in the anti-ICE protests that have been happening across the country, is people responding in real time to raids and arrests that are happening in their community, and in some cases making it harder for those arrests to take place. So what these ICE agents are doing here, and essentially what's going on when these guys are getting arrested at court, which, this isn't always the case, but really what's happening here is that they have cases that are ongoing and the courts dismiss the case. So when the case gets dismissed in criminal court, that's a good thing. That means your case isn't going to be pursued by the state, so you're free to go. But in the case of immigration court, case dismissed means the court is not making a decision about your immigration status. So you have moves and options that you can make from there. You can apply for asylum, you can appeal the decision to try to keep your immigration case going. However, what happens in the intermediary is once the case has been dismissed and the court is no longer looking at it, that is when ICE shows up to arrest these guys, because they're essentially in a moment where it's a gray area and they can be put into what is known as expedited removal, which basically fast tracks them for deportation without court processes and that sort of thing, without the ability for them to get a hearing at any point. So by dismissing these cases, the courts are essentially putting them directly into the ICE pipeline for deportation, even though the court isn't explicitly making a decision that they're not citizens or they're not allowed to be here or whatever is exactly in question at the time. So, like I said, this is just another stage of escalation that the Trump administration, and especially people like Stephen Miller, were always prepared for and wanted to happen. And they especially want to be able to make an example out of Democratic lawmakers. However, the core point of this is that what Brad Lander is doing here, by directly getting in between the immigrant and the officer trying to arrest him, especially considering it, these are masked, plainclothes, supposedly officers. I mean, what are we doing? They're not presenting badges. They're not presenting warrants. What the fuck is this? How is anybody, no matter who they voted for, okay with this? It's insane what people will justify just to feel like they're still on the right team or whatever, or to not have to admit that they are wrong. This is insane. And this is exactly what is sparking the protests nationwide, is these masked assailants doing whatever they want, going wherever they want, lying to school officials, lying to people at hospitals, trying to get access to immigrants so they can just disappear them. And there's no accountability happening here. And this was the plan of the administration. And the reality is, the more people who get in between them and what they're trying to do, and the more a spectacle is created around what they're trying to do, the more trouble they're going to have doing it. The whole point of this is that they're able to move fast. Nobody can identify them. They get in, they get out, they do what they need to do. Nobody asks any questions. They don't answer any questions. If they're on camera, if it's causing a big kerfuffle every time, they do this because people are noticing them and they're speaking out about it, and in some cases getting directly in between them, which no doubt is a dangerous thing to do. That is going to essentially cause problems for the agency at large, not just those individual officers. And this is why we see that ICE is running out of money. They're having to spend unexpected amounts of money dealing with not just protests, but with direct intervention by the communities of what they're trying to do, trying to get around when people have figured out what their plans are and that sort of thing, and as well as just mismanagement is causing them to be running out of money. And now this is one of the things that Trump's quote unquote big beautiful bill would fund, is ICE, and making sure they have detention centers to build and that they have a lot of staff to do these rapid detentions. So as long as that bill doesn't pass, that's when the time is ticking on this ICE funding. Once that bill gets passed, they're going to have all the funding that they could want to do all this stuff. So that's another reason to push back against that bill as much as possible, which they already have plenty of opposition to because of the fact that they want to cut Medicaid and do adjustments to Social Security that would amount to cuts and that sort of thing, and just tax cuts to the rich. So it seems like the protests have slowed down a little bit in Los Angeles, at least. And while the demonstrations over the weekend with No Kings was great, it did seem to amount to kind of a burst of catharsis, and it seems like some of the direct action that was taking place on the streets has tapered a little bit. Doesn't mean it's gone. The fact that that much opposition to ICE's raids erupted out of nowhere is a very promising sign. But we really do have to be careful with these broader movements that happen as from an honest place of trying to make a non-violent, peaceful demonstration of the fact that people oppose this. But the reality is that doesn't stop anybody. And if we were up against some kind of presidential administration that had some sort of conscience or cared about what the tone of the country was, cared if there were large mass protests against them, Trump doesn't care. He's always had that. None of his people care. So any protest movement that doesn't amount to political pressure somehow is not accomplishing anything. And so I'm not saying it's bad for people to get out there in the streets and that the No Kings protest was a bad thing, but I do think that we are seeing kind of the negative results of it, which is that by having these big major protests, which were peaceful, the police were ready. They were ready for both to incite non-peaceful action, and they were ready to go Rambo style at a moment's notice and to sort of keep control of these protests, because they knew it was going to be a larger demonstration, but they also knew that there was this unrest going on. And in LA, I can say that they knew that this was their opportunity to show force when it comes to the Marines that have been there and the National Guard. And so they wanted to send the message in LA over the weekend that, the authority presence is there and that they're not going to allow any unrest to happen and that sort of thing. And so I do think that made an effect, and they issued a bunch of arrests locally as well. Like the LAPD made several arrests in downtown LA of protesters. And so they're trying to send the message that they want people to get off the streets and engage in these more peaceful demonstration protests. But there's a reason that they want people to engage in that and not the stuff that was more disruptive and actively gumming up the works of law enforcement. So I don't think that energy is gone, but it's like I was saying, this whole thing is going to continue to ebb and flow, no pun intended. It's going to continue to pop up in different places. But now that we see that the energy is there and people really oppose these ICE raids, we got to continue to agitate for that, because there's an appetite for people who want it to be called out, who want to see what's going on, and who want people not just to say this is not normal and this is not something I accept, but to do something about it and to show the kind of resistance against these Gestapo police that you would show against the Nazis as they were coming to drag people out of their houses. I think that's what there's a hunger for. And so as long as there are some politicians out there, even if they're doing performative demonstrations and gestures in that direction, it's still a good thing, because people need to be able to visualize what it looks like to resist this type of tyranny. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. I'm posting different kinds of stuff there, like podcasts that don't make it to the main channel, book reviews, movie reviews. I'm reading Catcher in the Rye right now. I'm probably going to review that on there. Also posting music early. I've got a couple EPs out that were available first for members only. Right now, there's a couple tracks on there. There's a freestyle by me and my buddies Wrecked and Psych. So if you want access to all that, different podcasts and other stuff, become a member. And if there's other kinds of content that you'd like to see for members only stuff, then let me know and we'll work some things out.